In the last video, I finished making these vertical storage units, and since then, I've started putting stuff in there. The first one that I started with is this one right here. If I pull it out, you'll see that there's bins inside there. The bottom four of these actually came from my grinder outfeed stand. I had those in the bottom, but of course I didn't use them for anything. That's the problem with storage down low, especially drawers. Well, not especially drawers, but drawers in particular. It seems like it's really a waste if they're very close to the floor, especially when you're older like me. Older people don't like to bend over that much to reach stuff, so having it up higher is great. The thing about these bins is that they tip out, so I can take them out and get at the contents, or I can just reach in. There's really enough space to get in and pick out the biscuits that I have in these ones. And in the ones above, I've got some sanding discs that I use often for my 6-inch sander. Same deal over here. Take it right out. Space is a little bit tight, but that was me maximizing what I had here. I really wanted to use the majority of it. You can put anything in here, really. It doesn't have to be bins. It can be shelves that are actually removable or movable or fixed to put things on. Have a little ledge around it so that the things won't slide out or fall off as you pull the drawer in and out. One thing I had to do with this, because this is now really heavy, is I had to add a block up here to the top to keep pressure against the panel. The weight of this wants to pull it over a little bit. It doesn't really affect how it operates, but it affects how it looks. It was pushing this panel over, so it was almost touching this one, so it kind of looked bad. Well, like I said in the last video, the end one here is for my router bits. I do have a cabinet that I made a couple of years ago that's really nice. And when I made it, it held all of the router bits that I had at the time. Since then, I got a whole bunch of other ones that were given to me by Canadian Tire. And I bumped into them yesterday and knocked them on the floor, of course. So you can see they're all over the place. So anyway, I made a new rack, and here it is. And I'll quickly go through what I did to make it. So the first thing that I did was to cut a piece of 1/2-inch plywood to the right size to use for the rack. Then I figured out what I think will be the ideal spacing for the bits. I'm basing this on my previous experience and my other cabinet. And then rather than drawing out lines on the plywood, I made a series of very shallow cuts on the table saw in a grid pattern, and then I could use that grid pattern to drill the holes. Here I'm using a scrap piece of plywood as a guide for the 1/4-inch holes. I'm using a regular twist drill for this, so this will keep the bits centered and also prevent chip out on the surface. I drilled 88 holes for the 1/4-inch bits. Then I drilled 55 freehand with the 1/2-inch Forstner bit. The Forstner bit cuts a cleaner hole but clogs up more easily, so it's slow going. To make it easier to insert the bits, I chamfered the edge of each hole, and I'm running the drill backwards to keep the bit from chattering too much in the hole. And then I can sand the panel, and that gets rid of any dirt that might be on the surface or any burrs from drilling the holes. To space the rack away from the panel, I cut pieces of 1/2-inch plywood, then I glued and nailed those on with 5/8-inch brads. I also want to mount the wrenches and the other collets I have on here, and figured I'd keep it simple with just screws to hang them from and cheap magnets just to keep them in place and stop them from swinging back and forth. The magnets drop into 1/2-inch counterbores, and I'm using some fast set epoxy to hold them in there. And then it's just to drill the pilot holes and drive in the screws that the wrenches will hang from. To mount the collets, I'm using 1/2-inch dowels and a 1/4-inch bolt. And these just get glued into holes drilled in between the two bigger wrenches. I drilled the holes for the 1/4-inch bits slightly oversized, but the 1/2-inch holes were still a bit too tight, so I made a quick and dirty sanding drum from a glue stick and a strip of sandpaper. And I chucked that in the drill and used that to remount the holes. To keep it looking clean, I brushed down 1 coat of water-based polyurethane, and when that dried, I lightly sanded it and gave it a 2nd coat. And so the idea is that it just mounts on the panel right inside the drawer like that. So I've got the drawer taken out, and I'm just going to take the panel, put it in place up flush with the top here, and get a clamp on it so it won't move. And then I'm just going to drill pilot holes through and drive 1 1/4 inch screws in to fix it onto the panel. I'm screwing this on from the back, but it can be just as easily screwed on from the front. It's just, I think this is a little bit easier, and I don't want to see the screws in the front. So now that I've got it fastened, I can slide it back in. And that's the beauty of this system. All you need to do is take it out and put it back in when you need to, if you need to make any changes. Okay, now's a good time to load it up, but I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to show you what I did with the center one. It's different again. And this is really the original concept with this. And that was to, originally I planned to make a tall cabinet. Actually the height of this, the top of this cabinet here. And inside the cabinet would be several panels that would roll out on casters. I could probably better illustrate this with the SketchUp drawing that I made. And then the panel would just slide out on the casters and it would stop. There would be a stop built in, and there'd be a guide up on top that would keep it from tipping over, obviously. And you could mount whatever you wanted to on either side of the panel. And that would be almost like a mobile tool wall, except the mobility would be limited to sliding it in and out. So it would be, you know, the big brother of this right here. So I'm going to pull this out and show you what I got done here. Inside here, I've got this I can mount stuff on. I've got this that I can mount stuff on. And I've got space here that I can mount stuff on as well. I think that this type of storage would be best suited for stuff that you're not going to use on an everyday basis. I've got lots of things around my workshop here that I need access to occasionally, but not every day. And then I've got things that really should be on the tool board up here that are not up there because I don't have any space left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of the things off of that tool board and put in here to free up some space on there. And I'm also going to add some other stuff to it. So I want to get started on this today, and that'll be the subject for the next video, though. I want to devote an entire video just to this center section right here, showing how I put it together.